No one had seen the other vans place themselves at points along the cornfield. The people just ran wildly in panic toward them as if their first thought was to hide in the stalks. The quicker ones got caught at once, their paths cut off by officers holding out their arms. They surrendered without a word. The slower ones veered off into the open spaces of the cordon and dove into the field. Most were caught in the first sweep, except for some who ducked under the arms of the officers and hustled down the road, but they too were quickly run down by another van and escorted inside. The handful who hid in the cornstalk seemed to have gotten away. We all cleared and waved our arms as if our side had won. Some of us jeered at the officers. My brother Nardo was the loudest. Everyone quieted down, though, when some of the officers formed a line along the field and disappeared into the stalks. A while later they came out, yanking on the shirt collars of those we thought had gotten away. Everybody sighed and said nothing. The foreman who'd given us the scraggly row rushed over to see what was going on. He took off in a huff, saying, "Son of a beaches," and worse. I thought he was going to cuss those immigration guys off, but instead he stood by meekly watching the officers corral the people before loading them into the vans. I tried to find the Mexican on the road next to ours, but I didn't see him. I hoped he'd gotten away. The officer in charge approached the foreman and said something we couldn't make out, but it sounded like a scolding. The foreman came back and knelt down by the water truck. "Damn son of a beaches," he said again, flicking his hat off and raising dust as he slapped it against his pant leg. He poured himself some water and glared over at the immigration officers as they packed in the people and roared off in a boiling cloud of dust. A crowd of us stood around covering our eyes. No one bothered to go back to work. When the air cleared, a man tottered back from the spot where the vans had assembled. He was an older man with salt and pepper stubble on his chin and a slightly longer and darker mustache. He was nursing his right knee. At first I thought maybe he had gotten away, but then someone recognized him and laughed. "Hey, Joe, you're not a wetback. You're a bracero." Joe came slowly over and took off his hat and covered his stomach as if he had been caught naked. He shrugged an apology and said he couldn't help it. When everyone else began to run, he got so excited he ran too. He looked down at his legs as if they betrayed him. He said immigration let him go as soon as they saw he had too much meat on his bones to be a wetback. Everyone laughed. Then his family, whose confused uncle he was, came over and led him away. Nardo and I laughed too, but for some reason I thought he was the best man in the whole field. Of the 20 or so people left, everyone claimed they encouraged the Mexicans not to run. They said immigration guys usually don't go into the fields to check for citizens unless they have a good reason. If you acted like you belonged, sometimes you could fool them. They said none of those ungratefuls took them at their word, though, and for that they had only themselves to blame. One of the listeners, a tall, pimple-faced guy with blotchy cheeks and the skin of a fig, only paler, shouted out, "Pinches gavachos don't give a damn about harassing us. Gavachos do what they want." He didn't wait for anybody to answer back, nor did he pick up any cans or equipment, but walked quickly away, swung the door open of a rusty Buick, and drove off. "I guess he came alone," Nardo said musingly. He rubbed his eyes with the backs of his wrists, then became more alert. "Hey, we can pick on any row we want now." "That man's crazy. Those people don't live here anyway," said a short, moist-faced guy with tight, bunched-in cheeks and pants that settled unevenly around his waist. When he walked, one of his legs looked shorter than the other. He bent over to one of the rows a Mexican had been picking on and lifted up a pair of old shoes. The soles were crusted with mud and the leather scarred and furrowed like the faces of old men who've worked in the fields all their lives. He held them at the tips of his fingers and away from his precious nose. The man who wore them probably had taken them off in the heat to stick his toes in the moist, irrigated soil. A small chorus of laughter went up when he held them high, then fell when he dropped them back to earth. He rummaged some more down the row until he found a sack bulging with chili peppers. "Hey, I'm going to keep these," he declared, and began dragging the sack. When everyone saw this, they all began to scramble around for the other abandoned sacks, claiming their right by how close their rows had been to the Mexicans beside them. The sacks belonging to the man working on the rows next to ours were laying tightly sewn on their sides. Nardo walked over and placed his hand on one. Two other guys came over to argue about whom the others belonged to, but my brother was stronger, and after some half-serious pushing and shoving, they walked away grumbling. "Look, Manny," Nardo said, excitedly spearing up his shirt sleeves. He lifted one sack by its ears and pounded it on the ground, packing the peppers down its belly. "We've got more than it'd take us 2 days to pick. Hey, you can even buy your mitt." I thought of the baseball glove, all clean and stiff and leather smelling, and of myself in the cool green lawn of center field. I imagined already being on the baseball team at school and people looking at me. Not these people picking chilies or those sent away in the vans, but people I had yet to know, watching me as I stood modelling in center field. I looked down at the sacks, then far out in the distance, at the clouds of dust folding and unfolding where the vans were pulling away. I wondered how long I'd have to work to fill those sacks. The weariness of it stretched as wide as the horizon.